This is a security announcement. For passengers, please make sure they have their belongings on them at all times. Any unattended baggage will be taken by police and
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome aboard.
Today we're in Vietnam for an episode that features two guests and a double dose of advice and experience, having created some of the biggest brands and best company cultures in the world. The first is a two-time Businessman of the Year with 2 decades of fitness industry experience under his belt, exceeding expectations at every opportunity. Joining him is another fitness veteran with a background steeped in success, from sales to senior management, before inspiring and making life better for others in his current venture. So together they head up the CMG Management Group, an initiative that's igniting fitness as a movement and transforming the health and wellness landscape in Vietnam. From CMG Management Group, please welcome Chairman Randy Dobson and CEO Dane to the Escape Limits podcast. Welcome, and thank you for inviting us to your offices. Very impressed.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So tell us a little bit about, tell us a bit of background on you guys, because how did you get into this business?
Wow. Long story.
Do we have an hour for just that? You go first.
So my background, originally I went to school for hospitality. Right. I was in the travel industry, and had always had a passion for fitness and for exercise, and decided to make a change in career, and was looking at what industry did I see it was going to be around for a long time, where you could continue to build your career. At that particular time in my life, it was about 1994, I guess. The travel industry was going through a major what do you call revolution, right? A lot of disruption because of the internet. Right. So travel agencies, airlines, hotels, nobody really knew how to deal with the internet. They were popping up everywhere. You were seeing travel agencies shutting down all over the place, and airlines weren't sure quite how to handle it. And so I was looking at it and it was like, wow, this is really unstable at the time. But I got a background in serving people, and I love international travel, things like that. How could I apply this with something I'm passionate about in health and fitness? And so I made the leap and jumped into the fitness industry in Seattle.
Seattle,
yeah.
Right. And what was the company that you
started with? A company as a small chain called Hearts Athletic Club. They had 10 fitness centers, and started with them in '95, I guess it was, and worked there a couple of years, and they ended up getting acquired by 24 Hour Fitness. Right. A couple of years later, and so. I had done very well. It was a natural fit for me, and really enjoyed the role and enjoyed the job. And when 24 Hour Fitness came along, it was a huge organization, 400 plus clubs, and so it just gave me an opportunity for more upward mobility, and so I was able to grow my career with them, right. Which eventually led me to Asia, because we acquired a chain out in Asia in '99, and the original group that was running that chain, it was called California Fitness. They had a 3-year earn-out period, and then the senior team from 24 Hour Fitness came in. So I was part of that acquisition team that came in, and that was in 2002. Right. And so I came out to Asia, was overseeing sales for Asia, and stayed with the company up until we did the global exit in 2006. I think it was 2006. Right. Loved Asia, wanted to stay in this area of the world. I had a 3-year non-compete at that time with all the markets that we were operating in. And so I started looking at, what are some new markets that I could go into, and kind of start the industry in those new markets. And looked at several. We looked at Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, India, but Vietnam really struck me as a amazing opportunity. It was kind of a untouched gem, and I think a lot of people didn't recognize the opportunity when you looked at the demographics and looked at what was happening economically. So yeah, we jumped in 2007, opened up our first club, and yeah, ever since.
Right. And Dane, what about yourself? How did you guys?
Well, I was always an athlete in school, and then after that I was a poor college student, and I couldn't afford a membership at 24 Hour Fitness when it was $24. Tells you how poor I was. So I applied for a nighttime security front desk receptionist role at 24 Hour Fitness because you got a free membership with it, as I was completing my studies at University of Washington in Seattle. And I had another company I was trying to start on the side, which was called Mole in One. It was a mole catching business.
A what?
A mole.
Mole
you know,
catching.
little moles that pop up out of the ground?
Yeah.
So I called the business Mole in One. I traveled around Seattle and the east side, Bellevue, all the rich areas of the city, and caught moles for a living. And that's how I paid for my university education.
Wow.
And then from there, I had a couple friends that were earning a lot of money at 24 Hour Fitness. And this guy was already a legend there. I think you were a GM already at the time when I came in, like 98. And they were driving around brand new cars, Corvettes and Yukons and Denali's, and all my buddies who graduated from business school were earning like 30 grand a year and struggling. So I tried out sales December 15th of 1998, I believe. And in 15 days, within 2 weeks, I had excelled to the #1 salesperson in the organization.
Right.
In just 2 weeks of actually selling memberships. And then I met this guy around that time, actually when I was a nighttime security. He used to come in late and worked out, and that's how we met, and the rest is kind of history. So he went to Hong Kong first in 2002, I believe. And then he called me and asked me if I'd like to come out to Hong Kong and do great things together. And I said, I'm there, just let's do it. So he flew me out and had a great time. And then I actually moved to Hong Kong shortly after that, within 2 weeks of my first trip there. And then moved to Malaysia, opened up clubs in Malaysia, back to Hong Kong, and then we both came out to Vietnam together in 2007.
Right. It seemed like 24 Hour Fitness really kind of created a lot of industry leaders. What do you think sort of made that company so special at the time? And what do you think it gave a lot of the people that are in the company to go on and do other things, do you think?
I mean, for me, I was with a small chain, and there were guys that had been with the company for 20 years that were still in general manager, club level operating, and so for someone like me that was coming in young, the chances of me getting an opportunity to manage a club was pretty limited. But when 24 Hour Fitness came in and acquired that chain, they gave me tremendous upward mobility. And one of the things that 24 Hour Fitness did is they rewarded people that performed. And they didn't really look at how long you'd been in the industry. It was how could you deliver? Could you deliver on your outcomes? Very much as Dane calls it, a meritocracy, right? And so if you're delivering and you're achieving your objectives, you're going to get opportunities. I mean, I look back on the fact that, in 2002, I was 20.
Yeah, what, 28?
27.
27.
So give a 27-year-old kid opportunity to come out to Asia and oversee sales across, at that time, I think there were 7 countries. It was insane, right? But I delivered. I mean, the point was it wasn't a fact of the age. It's like, by that time, I had already been a district manager. I was running the market in Seattle. I had a good track record. I'd been in the industry for 7 years already. It wasn't like I was very junior, but 24 Hour Fitness gave that opportunity because they were growing so rapidly. And also Mark Mastrov, who's the founder of 24 Hour Fitness, is a tremendous leader in the industry. He's the legend, actually, in the industry, and really, in terms of the modern gym fitness industry, is very much thought as the godfather of it all, right? I mean, he has so many different fitness chains out there can tie their roots back to Mark Mastrov, and his mentorship, even to this day, he's still a tremendous mentor for me. In fact, he was my first partner here in Vietnam, so he invested with me when I first came into the market, and I can attribute much of our success to the lessons that he had provided and the mentorship that he has given and continues to give to this day. He's a partner of mine now with UFC Gym, so we own the franchise rights for UFC Gym, which Mark co-founded. So yeah, I think you can. The one key point or the thing that you can always take back to definitely was the 24 Fitness leadership under Mark, and then just the fact that the company was expanding and growing so quickly that if you were somebody that could deliver, you got opportunities.
Right.
And many times you got opportunities that you probably didn't deserve.
Or before you were ready.
Or before you were ready. So it was very much a sink or swim. And for those that could swim, they rose to the top. And for those that didn't, they didn't make it. So
yeah. What do you think was part of the secret sauce that they had? Because we're in the industry. We work with many operators that have dreams to expand and move into different countries, but you see a huge amount that don't succeed and fail. But what would you put down some of those things that caused them to be as successful as what they were at the time? Was it just the timing and they moved before anyone else, or was there anything that they did specifically?
Well, they developed a lot of amazing leaders. So that culture and the system that you're brought up in, I think Mark was kind of the originator of that. How to duplicate yourself and put great people into important roles of the organization and just get out of the way and let them do it, right? I mean, he had people like Mark Pauly, John Romeo, all these guys that just came in and delivered amazing results, and that's how he really built the company, right? It was on the back of his people, right? Not anything else.
And he had, they developed some fantastic systems for scaling, and I think that those are systems that many different brands still use today. Those were developed by Mark and his original leadership team, all the way from their marketing systems, their sales systems, their operation systems. I think you see many offshoots of what that original team created under Mark's leadership and with 24 Hour Fitness, and so a big part of it definitely was the business systems. Because we deal with it all the time here in Vietnam now, where people believe that if they just go in and copy your club design, that they're going to get the same results, and they don't understand that it's actually what goes on behind the scenes, right? Anybody can buy the same equipment, anybody can rip off designs of clubs and rent the same space, but you've got to understand how you run that back end. What are your marketing systems? What are your operational systems? How can you consistently deliver and scale that business? That's the secret sauce. And then also just that culture of putting great people in place and then getting out of their way and allowing them to do the job, right? If you've prepared them properly, if you've developed them and given them the tools to succeed, then allowing them to then fail forward is a really important part of, I think, why Mark was able to build 24 Hour Fitness to the scale that he did.
And it was still pressure, right? I mean, there's that saying of the amount of pressure you can handle in your life is in direct proportion of the success that you'll have.
Right.
And definitely you built up a thick skin working in that organization. And if you could rise to the top and survive, and they gave you the tools. Like I would say the training and the growth, my personal development kind of journey started with 24 Hour Fitness, with the Tom Hopkins sales program and Og Mandino scrolls and all this type of stuff. I mean, the seeds were 24 Hour Fitness. That growth culture definitely gave me the tools in order to succeed.
Do you think it's a big risk? Because I guess they were putting, these clubs are not cheap, particularly at the time, and putting people in there that probably haven't got a huge amount of experience running multi-million-dollar companies. Was it
I mean, it's a sink or swim, right? So there wasn't a lot of tolerance for failure.
No.
And there was always a lineup behind you of somebody ready to take your position, right? So you either deliver or get the fuck out of the way. Right. So as Dane said, there's a level of pressure there, but in that, some people thrive in that, We're sick enough, I think, that we have thrived in that type of an environment.
Sick in a bad way.
Yeah. But it brings out the best in you. I mean, it's like in any, I think for anything, if you're put in a high stress situation, it either brings out the best or brings out the worst in people. And that really depends on what's going on with their own psychology. So you definitely were put in high pressure situations and you were given a tremendous amount of responsibility. But if you delivered, if you were able to achieve your outcomes, you got more opportunity.
And they usually chose people that, especially in the management role, that like when I got an opportunity that I felt I didn't deserve, I felt that I owed them something, so I had to perform, right? It's like, this person has given me something that is way beyond my capabilities. They must see something in me.
Really?
I don't know how many times in my career, I think it's fairly unique within the fitness industry, where it's definitely not hotel industry. To be a GM in a hotel, you have to work 20 years in order to work your way up. But in the fitness industry, I was a GM by 22 years old or something like that. I had no business being a general manager of a multi-million-dollar club. But I spent my days and nights trying to prove to them that they made the right choice.
Right.
Yeah.
So the best people that kind of rose to the top, as you said, in that environment. So talk about the run-up. So you moved on from 24 Hour Fitness. What was the time period and the decision-making process to say, right, I'm going to open up in a country in the middle of Asia that's sort of very probably underdeveloped at the time? What was the decision-making process, and how long did it take before you opened that first location?
I was doing research for about 18 months before I found a location.
Right.
So it was around 2005. I'd been out in Asia, and I didn't know that we were getting ready to exit 24 Hour Fitness yet at that time. But I had been, working up the corporate ladder and had always been a very impatient type guy. And I was looking around at that point. I was VP of Asia, and I'm looking around, I'm going, all right, what's next, right? So next position was, moved to president maybe of Asia. And I didn't really see myself doing that, just being a corporate guy, right? And so I contacted Mark, and I said, Mark, I appreciate everything you've done for me. You've been an amazing mentor. I've worked with him by that time 12 years. But I think it's time for me to venture out on my own. And Mark, being the entrepreneur and the business genius that he is, he actually supported it. He said, Randy, no problem. Which was completely a surprise to me, because I thought he was going to be pretty pissed. I mean, he'd given me a tremendous number of opportunities.
I think that's because you wanted to open up Ben & Jerry's franchise.
No, it wasn't Ben & Jerry's. It was...
Randy would have been 300 pounds in this meeting.
So the funny story, if you want the truth, right? You want the true story. I love ice cream.
Yeah, me too.
And at that time, Cold Stone Creameries were opening up in the US. I had tried them out. And so I called Mark and I said, look, I appreciate everything you've done for me. I love this industry. I love working with 24 Hour Fitness, but I've got this entrepreneurial bug, and I need to know myself that I, have at least tried it. My father was a farmer. I grew up running our own business, and he taught me a lot of kind of values, and that, take control of your destiny. So by that time, 12 years working in the corporate world, had experienced a certain amount of success, and I thought, all right, I'm going to go out and do it on my own. So anyways, I contacted Mark. I said, I'm not going to compete. There's no way, I'm not going to go leave this company that's done so much for me and open up a gym to compete. So I think I'm going to do ice cream shops. And Mark said, that's an interesting idea. He said, you could do that. He goes, how long have you been, doing this now for? And I said, it's 12 years. And he said, and you're pretty good at it? I said, yeah. He goes, well, why wouldn't you just find a country that we're not operating in and go open up your own gym, if that's what you already know? He goes, in fact, if you did that, because I could invest with you, as long as it's not in a market that 24 Hour Fitness is in. And I thought, that's why you're who you are. I'm like, that's a great idea. I hadn't even, thought of it. So he kind of put me on the path. He's like, look, if you're going to leave, I'm not going to stop you. You've done great for our organization. You know, of course, we'd love to keep you, but if you want to go out and do your own thing, at least give me the ability to invest in you. I've developed you for, you know, all these years, more than a decade. For you to just leave and not even give me an opportunity to get an investment back out of you, that's not fair. And I said, all right. So he said, go find a country that we're not in, and open up, and potentially 24 Hour Fitness could be an actual acquisition, you know, target for you. What I didn't know is he at that time was also working on the exit for 24 Hour Fitness to Forstmann Little. So he said, look, don't resign, because I had stock options at that time. He said, don't resign, don't just jump out of this, and stay with the company, and but start looking and find the right market. You can't go into a market that we're operating, but go into any other market. And so that was kind of the genesis of it. I said, all right, I'm not going to do ice cream. I'm going to stick with what I know because I love it. And so I started looking at markets that 24 Hour Fitness wasn't in. During that time, 24 Hour ended up selling to Forstmann Little, and I was able to take a small piece of stock options from that, roll that into some intelligent investments, and then was able to use that to roll into Vietnam.
Right.
So Mark and I came into Vietnam, and then within about 2 years, we had Mark, myself, and one other partner who had been the original investor for California that we'd acquired. And after about 18 months, I was able to do a leveraged buyout, and we were able to take everything. Mark got a great return, and still remains a partner and mentor of mine, and then I was able to get full control of the company here in Vietnam.
Right. So how many clubs did they have? Did they already have clubs here, or did you open the first one?
We were the first one. We were the first one on the ground.
Right. And was that, you know, was that sort of a success from, you know, did you just say, right, I want to go into Vietnam, found a good location, and it worked straight away, or?
Immediate success.
Immediate success.
Yeah.
In fact, that club is still one of our most profitable clubs in the entire chain.
Really?
The second club is a different
That
story.
was a different story, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And on the first one then, why was that just that you were super smart, you knew the location, you knew the business model, and you just did a great job, or?
I think
I don't know about the smart thing.
Yeah, I don't think I was super smart. I think Mark and Eric were super smart. They had enough experience opening clubs in Asia. I was more of the operating partner at that time. I was still quite junior, so I had been looking at different markets for about 18 months. I had already landed on Vietnam within my second visit here. I said, all right, this is the market. And so I had feelers out in the market trying to find space. At that time, there was no large footprint space, not in a reasonable price anyways. So looking, and finally, and this was just, it was going to be Mark and myself. And so Mark contacted me in early 2007, like February or something like that, and he said, hey, remember the guy that we bought the California chain from? He thinks he has a location that he'd like to open up in Vietnam, but he doesn't have an operator, so why don't the three of us, instead of just the two of us, so three of us, if you like this site, why don't we all three go together on it, and you can run it, and you know, operate out of Vietnam. So he said, jump on a plane, go check out the space and see if it's a good space. And so flew down here, and it was really the first modern mall in Ho Chi Minh City. I mean, there was Diamond Plaza, which that one had been around for a little bit of time, and then this was in District 5, which is Chinatown for Saigon. And in all of our, you know, in Malaysia and Singapore, in those markets, the Chinese clients actually were our best clients. I mean, they, you know, were willing to spend a lot, and you know, valued health and fitness. So for me, all of the local advisors that I had you know, contacted, they're like, oh my God, don't go to Chinatown. It's like District 5. Why would you open up there as your first club? That's crazy. But from my experience in Asia, I'm like, that's that's the place to be, right? You know, that market tends to be a closed market. They've got a lot of discretionary income. In all of our other markets we've opened up, that particular client base treats us really well. So I went and looked at the space. It was a great space. I called up Mark and I said, yeah, let's do this deal. And he relied on me. You know, it was sight unseen for him. He just said, all right, if you like it, we'll do it. And so signed the lease. I signed the lease agreement that day when I landed, and flew back to Hong Kong and let 24 Hour Fitness know I was going to be exiting out, and that was it. Yeah.
Right. And it worked then, obviously.
It worked. Yeah. So we came in and we started. So Dane at that time was. He had been in Malaysia. He was back in Hong Kong. I told Dane about my plans, and I said, you know, love to have you join me.
I said I had a Vietnamese girlfriend one time.
Yeah. And he said, let's do it. I'd love to, you know, get an opportunity, go into a country that's the market didn't exist.
Greenfield.
One of I mean, why I chose Vietnam when I was doing the research on the country is that it had there were so many, you know, socioeconomic indicators that as a foreigner, my understanding of Vietnam, I didn't know about. It wasn't until I started kind of scratching the surface when I came here and started visiting that I was pleasantly surprised, right? And in Southeast Asia at the time, had the youngest median age, so I think the median age at that time was 28, had the highest literacy rate, single language, most stable government, right? I mean, since 75, the government hadn't changed. In comparison to other Southeast Asian countries, there's coups happening quite often. Yeah. And there was a significant amount of influence from the overseas Vietnamese, right? And they had just entered into the WTO at 2007. And one of the things that I like studying, you know, kind of macroeconomic patterns and what happens with countries, and I had seen that in Japan, you know, they had the kind of the end of the war, 1945, and if you looked about, you know, 40 years later, mid 80s is when Japan was just booming, but it took like 40 years to put that infrastructure back in place.
Korea in the 50s.
Korea in the 50s. The United States, 1865 had our Civil War, but right at the turn of the century, in the 1900s to the 1920s, that was boom time. Now, most of the country at that time was living in poverty, but the top 20% had unlimited wealth, right? And so when I came in and looked at Vietnam, I kind of saw the same pattern. I'm like, this could be another Japan. I still believe that to this day. I think that over the next 20 years, Vietnam's a really exciting market. So all of those kind of indicators, plus the influence of, you know, what the overseas Vietnamese were having on the country and how many of them were starting to come back into Vietnam, I thought that there was going to be a very rapid early adoption. Yeah. And two things that I was impressed about with Vietnam is that when you were going around in the mornings, I like to go around the city early in the morning when I first get here, and in all Asian countries you see elderly people doing Tai Chi and working out in the parks. But in Vietnam it was the entire family. Like you had the kids, I mean all age groups were working out, and I thought, wow, I mean this is a big opportunity because there were no modern gyms, they just didn't exist. And it had a very much a kind of cafe culture, I think probably brought in from the French, you know, so there's coffee shops where everybody liked to gather and have coffee. And then there was nightclubs, there was bars, but there wasn't really anything in between. There wasn't anything in the middle. I mean, there wasn't at that time really even modern movie theaters. Where we went into District 5 was the first modern movie theater. So,
and this was about
2007, 2000, yeah.
Right, about 10, 11 years ago, yeah.
And so I thought, you know, when we open up here, can we steal the idea from Seattle, from Starbucks, right? And try to create the third place, but make the third place a fitness center versus a coffee shop. Right. And try to fill that niche within society where people want to come and gather and connect with each other, but we're putting them into this healthy entertainment environment that also allows them to get into shape. And so that was kind of the genesis of the club concept. I wanted to create something really unique that hadn't been done exactly in other markets, but taking ideas from different industries like Starbucks and like the nightclubs and like the social centers where people go. And so creating these social hubs where people come to connect, but in that process, we get them into our ecosystem, we get them into good shape. And so that was the genesis of it. It worked really well. As Dane said, our District 5 club, our first location, was a big success. And so then when we were kind of drunk on our own success, everybody was saying, you got to get to City Center, you got to be in CBD.
They told us not to open up in District 5.
Don't open District 5.
Open up in District 1.
Yeah.
We did the opposite. We should have did the opposite again.
And how long was that when you decided to open the second?
Less than a year later.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So we had so much success in District 5. We're like,
Let's do
we
it.
got to do this again, right? This is going to be this is easy. And again, there was no locations with a large footprint in District 1. And I was driving by this construction site one day that was maybe a quarter of the way built. And they had a big picture of this glass tower, and I thought, all right, that looks like a nice place. So I went in and talked to the owner, and he said he was building it to be a hotel, but they hadn't had a tenant yet. And I said, well, how about we make it a fitness center? And the rents at that time, this is now 2008, so globally, the peak of the market everywhere. Everybody's out of their mind, right?
Yeah.
And so we signed this lease agreement that's Hong Kong level rents in Ho Chi Minh City. Again, I give it to Mark. He's like, all right, Randy, if you think this is a good site, I go, this is going to be a winner, Mark. Just like the last
Feel
one.
it.
I could feel it. Needless to say, it wasn't. But we did, we kept it going. And it was, there was a lot of good things about it because it gave us a presence, right? I mean, all of a sudden people knew our brand was there in City Center, and it was like, wow, these guys must have money coming in here to this market and taking a space like that. But it didn't have parking. Floor plate, was pretty small. It really wasn't built as a commercial center.
It's probably about this wide.
Yeah.
Right.
As is real.
Is it still, do you still own it now?
The lease
We just finished our
expired.
lease, so
Oh, really?
it was
2 months
the
ago.
happiest, one of the happiest days in our history when I could be like, all right, we're done
10
with its
years,
purpose.
we did our-
10 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
And what would you say you learned from that experience? Because we see a lot of people that they'll go into these places and think, shit, now I'm stuck with this. What would be one of the key lessons you learn if you did it again, I suppose?
Well, I think it's a lesson, and we still keep learning it. But our business, I always tell people, this business is a simple business. It's really simple. It isn't easy. Very few people can do it, but it's simple. You don't have to be a genius to figure it out. And it's just keep your costs down, keep your revenues up. And so when you sign leases,
There you go.
when you sign,
Not easy, but simple.
I can do that math. When and your two biggest costs are rent and payroll, right? And so when you have a fixed cost that is high, even if in the beginning that particular location is generating huge revenues, at some point in the future, especially in a prepaid market like this, because there's not really a dues industry here. It's
all prepaid.
It's all prepaid. You know that those first few years, that kind of grand opening, that newness of it, at some point it's going to slide down, and you better make sure that you have, your fixed costs for that location can still get covered by your revenues. Otherwise, you're going to be in a loss-making business. And in Asia, I think that happens more often than not. People sign prime locations. Yeah. They know that in the first couple of years, the revenues are going to be huge, but they don't anticipate that those revenues begin to, many times, start to slide down as competition comes in and things like that.
Short-term thinking.
Yeah, it's short-term thinking. That would be the single biggest lesson for us is even if you love the space and you really got to have it, really look at what you're paying per square meter and make sure that over the long term, over 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, that you can still cover those costs, especially on a prepaid business. A dues business, slightly different, right? Because you're really working those first couple of years just to build that dues base up, and hopefully that time your dues base is covering all of your fixed costs, and everything above that is then profits.
Right.
But not in a prepaid. Not in this part of the world. That's not the game yet.
So after that, sorry, go on.
No, I say we've learned how to pressurize our thinking, I guess. Because you ask anyone, is this a good place to sign? Normally they're going to say, yes, open it, right? They trust you. We're the experts in this market.
Yeah.
But I think we've really learned how to kind of break down the business and see if this is really going to work or not, and kind of have that antagonistic viewpoint with ourselves, because no one else will do it. We have to rely on ourselves to have that. So we've done that subsequently, kept our rents low, and hence where we're at today.
One of the challenges of coming into a market like this is there isn't a lot of other people to learn from.
Yeah.
No.
Right? Because you're kind of leading the way. Luckily, again, Mark's been a fantastic mentor for me for so many years, and he's opened up enough businesses in emerging markets to kind of know the pitfalls to look for, and so has been able to guide.
Why didn't he warn us about this?
Yeah, I don't know why he failed
forward.
forward. Yeah, we were too confident. But anyways,
How did you feel after that? So when you had that first success, second not quite so. What were you thinking after that? Were you thinking, right, maybe we need to?
If you remember, that was the economic down to the crisis hit, which actually was kind of a silver lining. It was actually, we're quite lucky that hit. It didn't hit us in our first club. Definitely hit us in our second club. I think more just from it was a bad location, a bad sign. But that economic crisis that hit actually kept all the competitors out of the market until we were able to get our feet underneath us again. So you had all the big guys looking at this market at that time. Vietnam was the flavor of the month. And when that downturn hit, everyone's like, okay, we're just going to focus in our markets that we're in. We don't want to take a chance with Vietnam. We only had 2 clubs at the time. And then 2-3 years later, when it became the flavor of a month, and again, it's cyclical, right? We had already built 6-7 clubs, got a little bit of a foothold. More so, the brand was super powerful, and then most people just didn't really want to compete with us at that point.
Yeah.
And with the barrier of it being a prepaid business.
Yeah.
Most of the other companies are just monthly dues driven. So.
I mean, what looks like something that could absolutely be devastating, and in our case, we saw it as an opportunity. So we signed the second club at the peak of the market, right? The next day, the whole world falls apart economically, right? And but in our business, fitness business isn't impacted as much, right? I mean, when the economy is down, people want to go work out to get the stress off their mind. When the economy is up, they're spending on everything else too, right? So you don't see the peaks and valleys so much in our industry. What it did for us, though, as an opportunity, is it allowed us to go back and renegotiate that rent with that landlord to say, hey, this was insanity. We signed up here at the peak of the market. Now it's not nowhere near that. It's 50% less. It gave us a little bit of leverage because people were closing down left and right. So at that point, he was kind of faced with, do I support these guys, or do I let them close? But who's going to rent this space? It's a huge space. There's no renters out there. The whole market is done. So it gave us a little leverage to be able to get the costs more in line and then make it at least a feasible business. And as Dane said, it kept potential competition, bigger guys out of the market, because everybody at that point was just kind of stepping back and going, okay, we need to consolidate and focus on our existing markets. And so it gave us a good 3-4 year window to just really own the market and be able to sign some really attractive rents with some of our other locations. So that very quickly made up for that second misstep.
Yeah. And what about, talk about the concept itself, because it's different to what 24-hour fitness was doing. It seems, I can't remember how many years ago I first came here. I went to a location near the water side, but it always seems to be quite aspirational and motivational and high design. Was that something that you decided from the beginning, or did that something evolve?
No, it was from the beginning. If you look at our very first club, it's very much focused around creating an entertainment center. When I was looking at the market, and actually, if you look at our clubs in Asia in general, even the ones that 24-Hour Fitness own, we leaned more towards the entertainment side versus the sports and fitness side. So what Mark has done really well, even with the new investments that he's made, But with 24 Hour Fitness, is he had signature clubs where he would sign athletes, and you know, we would partner with different athletes and on those clubs. In Asia, you know, we worked with like Jackie Chan, right? So the actors and things like that. So there was this kind of spin already in my mind when we came here about utilizing celebrities. So when I started doing research on the market, one of the things that struck me about Vietnam is it had a big desire or passion for fashion, right? There's a thriving local fashion industry here. There's actually a thriving local movie industry, Vietnamese movie industry, and music. And so, but sports not so much. I mean, soccer, football's popular, but you go back to 2005, 2006 when I was looking at the market, not really at all. So when we opened up the clubs, I said, rather than us trying to position it as this athletic place where, you know, gym where you work out, again, it's like, let's create a social hub. And what are the interests? What are the things that people really love? And it was, you know, music, fashion, and local movies. So we really targeted and partnered with the local celebrities. And even to the design of the clubs, we wanted to make it more around this entertainment and fashion and more excitement, right? So vibrant reds and blacks and crystals and things that you wouldn't probably find in a normal North American gym. But it resonated really well with this emerging, you know, new wealth. If you think back to, again, you know, the United States back in the early 1900s, in the 1920s, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, right? Most of the country was still living in poverty, but they wanted to escape to go, you know, to watch these movies where it was all glitz and glamour and this, you know, who's the guy? The movie they did. Gatsby.
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 That kind of Gatsby era, right? And so here, it really felt like that's where Vietnam was. It was coming out of, you know, emerging out of this kind of dark period, and they were looking for an escape, some glitz, some glamour, some, you know, place that was very aspirational. That even was how we came up with the tagline for the company. It was like, how can we create a tagline that is very active? Like, how can we position ourselves as the guide to help them raise their standards of living? And so we came up with this, making life better. When you join here, that you're in the process of making your life better just by joining. Again, it resonated really well. So, you know, California making life better versus in some of the other markets, you know, it's like, in the U.S., I think 24 Hour Fitness was, it's the way we make you feel. In Hong Kong, it was live better, right?
Yeah, live better. Which one was look better naked?
Look better naked, yeah.
Do you think that would only? Do you think that's just your concept alone? You know, is specific to Vietnam, or do you think that, you know, you hit on some? Because you talk about fashion and music, which seems to be quite universal. Do you think it and the sport thing? Also, you know, makes sense, but it seems like, you know, you could stick one of these facilities anywhere in the world. And
potentially, I think it resonates more with emerging markets,
right?
Because they're looking for that kind of escape from day-to-day grind, and so to be able to, you know, walk off the street and you're walking into this crystal chandelier, bright red and lights and beautiful people. I don't know if that resonates so well in, say, the United States market. I think that what could be off-putting to a lot of people, whereas here, I think in Asia especially, it's quite attractive. So we definitely catered to what we felt the market desired at that time, and as our clubs and the market has matured, you've seen a little, the design of the clubs also start to shift a little bit. You know, now we incorporate, you know, like more brick and cement tile, and so as the country evolves and the client evolves and they become more sophisticated, we're also trying to continue to lead the way there. Yeah. But I think our clubs today,
because they're beautiful clubs.
Yeah, the clubs today look actually different than our first club.
Really?
They were the first club was even more flashier than what you see now. Now we've used more organic materials and natural materials, as well as a bit of the flair with that. And I think they would do well in other markets. I don't know if the the original marketing campaigns that we utilized 10 years ago would resonate in more developed markets. I think what we're using today would. I think where we've evolved and where the market has evolved, it was very fast adoption, and I think that Vietnam, well, it was an interesting study. Global Web Index did a study globally just last year, I think 2016, 2017, and they were looking for fitness fanatics, right? People who work out at least 4 times a week or more. And they did, as a web, so as internet users, and Vietnam rated actually #1, had the most people who identified as fitness fanatics, 1 in 3 people. And it was higher. The U.S. was, I think, 17%. Vietnam was 30%. It wasn't that way 10 years ago, right? I mean, 10 years ago, nobody went to the gym. They had no idea why you would go to a gym, or even really what the concept of a gym was. And so to go from there, and within a decade now, they're leading the way in terms of health and fitness and activities. It's pretty impressive. I like to think we had a small part in that. But definitely the market has evolved, and so as it's evolved, we've evolved with it.
Intertwining ourselves in pop culture.
Yeah, it's quite clever. Like, I suppose a question to you, like, you obviously observed something that was quite unique going on into the market. The fact that people wanted something that's inspirational, the fact that, she said music, fashion was big and sport wasn't so big. So you really seem to understand the market. Do you think that brands that maybe come from Europe or North America that want to expand, do you think that's something that maybe some of them get wrong, is they try to say, well, look, we'll take what we're doing here and just sort of expand it everybody?
Yeah, you can't do that.
No.
Not in Southeast Asia, not at all.
10 years ago especially, because I think the world was less connected. Today, I would almost argue that a millennial in Vietnam has more in common with a millennial in the U.S. than they do with just one generation before them. And so I think the internet and Facebook, and it has completely changed the fabric of society globally. And so what resonates well with a young person here very much may resonate well with someone in the U.S. As an example, when we came here in 2007, if you had a tattoo, you were gangster. Like, you did not get a tattoo, especially a female. If you were a female and you had a tattoo, you were either a prostitute or a gangster. Like, nobody had tattoos. Today, everybody has a tattoo. I mean, and it's just completely a social norm. It was a huge taboo. I mean, a big one. I can't emphasize how big of a taboo it was. But because of influence of the internet and people seeing that, now it's like the coolest thing in the world, and you're not going to find anybody hardly in their 20s that doesn't have a tattoo. So again, it's just like there's this early adoption, and today, as a global brand, I almost feel like you have it easier to come into a market, because depending on who your target client is, they probably have already heard of you and want that product. I mean, you take a Zara. Zara doesn't have to do anything different when they come here. They just bring in Zara. They already are dying to get Zara or H&M.
Just smaller sizes.
Yeah. So in that way, I think not so much. But back then, for sure, like, you really, I feel like, needed to understand your market. And you just saw it with McDonald's or KFC when they tried to go into China the first times, right? Like, they tried initially to go in with just their set menus, and it failed miserably. They had to understand what the palate of the local
Starbucks too.
Yeah, Starbucks too. And I think now you see the other way. Now you see Asian tastes influencing the U.S., right? Now it goes back and forth.
And tell us a bit about your products, because you've got a number of different brands. I've been in a couple of clubs this morning, and I saw Centurion, and then you've got the
California
UFC. So how do they all work, and what are the different brands that you operate
This is what differentiates us from a global perspective. I think no one's actually doing what we're doing in terms of the ecosystem.
Right.
Yeah. So when we opened up initially, again, the idea was, how can we create not a gym, but create a social hub, a place where people want to come and they have this aspirational experience. And they're coming for the entertainment, but once we get them there, we can continue to market to them and find ways to add value to them and derive value, right? So personal training, yoga and eye, retail, supplements, all that, but you're kind of constrained within a box, and you can't be all things to all people, right? And so for our clientele, as they began to mature and as they began to have different discerning tastes, we started looking at how can we make sure that we stay with them through every stage of their life. I don't want to have you as a client for just your 20s, and then when you're in your 30s, it's not cool anymore. I want you to have a lifelong journey of wellness with us. And so we began to play with the idea of different brand concepts depending on where people are in their wellness journey and in the different stages. And the first one we came up with was Centurion. Because when California first opened up, it was that really cool, kind of hip, trendy place, but then there was this certain clientele who really wanted red carpet services, like, you know, first class versus economy class. Some people look at traveling on a plane just like, let me get me from point A to point B, and then some people are like, no way, like when my holiday starts when I get on that plane, right? And I want that red carpet service. We may share the same plane, but I'm going to be treated differently. And in a market like this where you had it's very much a class-driven society. You had a certain sector of people that were just like, no, I don't care what the cost is, I just want that level of service. And so we began to create this Centurion offering, which were VIP areas within our Californias. And the amounts that people were willing to pay for that red carpet service were, you know, 10x on what someone would pay on a regular membership. So you're getting $1,000 a year on one membership, $10,000 a year just to offer this additional red carpet service, but you got to deliver it, right? So that led then into actually us building Centurion clubs, so that they have that Centurion red carpet service within the normal Californias, but then they also have their own unique places that they can go, and it's a different style. It's definitely much more luxe.
Yeah.
And we
gold,
have
gold toilets.
Gold toilets, and we have there's personal butlers within the locker rooms, and we have different services that level of clientele wants. And so, you know, that's your Grand Hyatt, your Ritz-Carlton kind of clientele.
Right.
And so that worked, and that really targeted business owners and executives and that more premium clientele. We also saw that yoga has always been a huge market. I mean, just from the day we opened up our yoga clubs, our yoga centers within the clubs, they were packed.
Really? Is that again a sort of country-specific trend? Do you think?
I
mean, it's a global phenomenon, but Vietnam is they love their yoga.
Yeah. Singapore, Malaysia, definitely not as impactful.
And so
unique.
We just saw the opportunity. There were, again, as some of our clients were maturing and becoming, you know, more yoga centric. They were coming in, they're like, I don't need all of the other stuff. I just want this, you know, purest yoga experience. And it was predominantly female, 90% female. So we said, you know, why don't we create a brand that's for that yoga purist, that's really angled for females. That's 90% clientele is females. They tend to be higher educated, a little older. They're 30s and above, and they're willing to pay the additional premium, even though they have less facilities. Really, what they're wanting is this amazing yoga experience, and in that, one of the things, again, just understanding your market that I looked at with Vietnam is for women, especially here. They're expected to take care of their husbands, their children, their grandparents, their parents. That is very much a expectation, and taking the time to just take care of yourself is almost like this selfish. And so we wanted to create this place where they had permission to love themselves, and that became our tagline for Yoga Plus, which was love yourself, and like letting them know, hey, it's okay. Actually, you're a better wife if you can love yourself. You can't give what you don't have.
Yeah.
So if you can't love yourself, how are you going to love your husband? How are you going to love your children if you never take the time to give back to yourself? And so, again, that one resonated really well.
Especially Vietnamese females, they sacrifice so much for their families, and they give up everything for them. So we wanted to create that environment where they could invest in themselves for 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour a week,
Right.
so they can give more. Yeah.
And you have like a VIP yoga as well, or one-on-one.
So it's called Yoga and I,
Yeah.
and that's really, to me, that's how yoga should be taught. I mean, going into a class with 20 or 30 people, okay, but if you really want to have a true yoga experience and get the most out of it, that one-on-one teacher instructing the student and having it really be personalized and customized is the way to go. And it also, it very much was like personal training, right? If you're going to get the best results, you get a personal trainer. And so the yoga classes are great for the social experience, and we have amazing classes, but if you're really wanting to get that unique one-on-one personalized experience, you do the Yoga and I. And it would same reason somebody would hire a personal trainer.
Yeah. Tell me about people, because first club we went into, met a guy, he'd won, forget the gentleman's name, but he'd won 2 awards, best club. We asked him about, what does he think about the company and what does he like about it, and it was kind of very much a life-changing experience for him. He loved it, he loved the opportunities it gave him, and he was extremely motivated he said, I've already made the space for where my next trophy is going to go. What do you do to create that culture?
Wow, that's a good question. I mean, it's kind of just don't reinvent the wheel. We talked about Mark and 24-hour fitness before. You could be on any side of the tracks and you can come here, and if you are all about adding value and you're all about growth, you'll thrive in this meritocracy type of system. It's not about how long you've been employed here, it's about the value that you can bring. And if it's coming from an authentic space and a genuine space, that's really the culture that we've created here. And it's not by accident. We have a very specific culture, formula, foundation that anyone that comes into our company, they have to go through. They kind of have to indoctrinate into that culture. And it's not for everyone, but the ones that it clicks for, it's like a rocket ship. They're strapped in and they're going into outer space. So I think probably, I'm not sure, was it a Vietnamese gentleman
Yes.
you're speaking to? Probably Brian was his name. It's probably
that?
who it was, I would imagine. But most of them, we have those stories all the time, and that's what's great about what we do, and this is where I derive the most value from. Like, we have this great fitness and all this stuff, we add value to our clients, but what I get jazzed up about and what drives me and gets me up every morning is the direct impact that we can have on our team's lives. Like, we have people that started with us 11 years ago and they were earning, $150 a month. They didn't have 2 nickels or dimes or quid or whatever you want to call it to rub together. And now they own 3, 4 houses, couple cars, family.
Yeah, he said he got
maybe
he
2
got
families.
a scooter. He won a
know.
scooter or something as well.
He won a Centurion scooter actually, and he has a car. This is the impact that is generational, right? And this is coming to a country like Vietnam. You can really feel that. We're in the U.S. or more of these developed countries, you don't get that. And these people they're so loyal to us. If you touch their life in that special way, it's automatic. It's like kind of waterfall effect. They do the same thing with their team. But like I said, it's definitely on purpose. It's something that we've refined from 24-hour fitness, and like maybe we've implemented a lot of Tony Robbins or Zappos or Starbucks or this type of stuff. And we just kind of create our own concoction of culture. I can trademark that, concoction of culture. And this is where we're at now. And I think a testament of that is our turnover. When people, we have tons of people that have been with us for the whole ride.
Really?
10 years, 9 years, 8 years, in a country where usually it's been known as, if I offer you $10 more, I'm going to jump to the other job.
Really?
But it hasn't been the case with us. Sometimes if it's not a culture fit, that's another thing. But if it's a culture fit, you're with us for life.
Right.
Yeah.
The probation period is really an opportunity for us to see if they're the right fit, and for them to see if it's the right fit. And so we don't worry too much about that period of time. In fact, we'd rather have them leave in that period of time. But once they get through it, like our retention rates are quite high. And again, it goes back to this idea of you can't give what you don't have, right? And so if we're expecting our team members to make life better for our clients, we have to first make life better for them, right? And so our focus is teaching them the tools, and it starts with the right psychology, right? If I can give you that gift of psychology, and so you have a level of certainty in your life, you can then pass that on to someone else. But if you're living with a high level of uncertainty in your life, how are you going to provide anybody else that? And so in order to influence somebody, I have to already believe it myself and have experienced it firsthand. Otherwise, I'm just talking, and people can read right through that. So for us, it's really understanding first we need to, if we're going to have this business that's about making life better, it has to start with all of our team members. Then they can start passing that gift on to our clients. And that's how the ecosystem thrives and people stay in it.
And we instill in them, and I think it started again, you know, when we first started in the business, of being okay to send the elevator back down. What I mean by that is our team, they come in and they start making money and they start progressing and they, you know, learn these skills and they start, you know, selling or, you know, servicing or whatever it might be. And they reach kind of the top of their, you know, in their club, in their district, in their region, or in the country. And there's no selfishness, very selfless, actually. And they're very excited to send that elevator back down and sometimes go in the elevator, bring up these people with them to the top. And there's nothing more powerful. When Randy and I do it, it's okay, right? But when it's Vietnamese with Vietnamese and they're able to teach and instill what they've learned into, you know, their team, and they start leading, it's an amazing sight, real amazing sight. And now I think we're seeing it 10 years into this journey, it's happening more and more, definitely exponentially.
And as the company grows, the opportunities grow with it.
Yeah.
And I look at my own experience when, you know, I was growing up through the corporate ladder and then saying, well, what's my next step? And I, at that time, was kind of like, well, my next step would be this. But actually, with what we've created with our ecosystem, and kind of going back to what you had asked earlier, like how we're unique, so we have the fitness vertical, and so there's this lifelong fitness journey, and there's opportunities to grow within the different brands there. But we've developed, you know, 3 other verticals that all feed into each other. You know, we have also our medical clinics, and so we've been able to take some of our team that, you know, were in what we call preventative healthcare, and now they're into corrective healthcare. They're working in the clinics, and they're, you know, applying the skills that they learn coming up through the clubs. We have our media division. You know, we have we ended up developing a movie production company, and we develop talent and celebrities, and so there's people that through that, again, that aspirational message, that's an attraction for them. So they see this opportunity to go work in media, and so there's different roles in different spaces that the team members can work, and having that opportunity to be able to grow both vertically and horizontally within our organization, our ecosystem, it really makes it unique, and it allows us to keep people longer, I think. And it also allows us to add more value to our clients. So we're not just only helping them with that, you know, wellness journey from fitness side, but we're also helping them with the corrective healthcare on our medical side, and we're also creating amazing content that educates them how to live a better quality life with our media division. And then we have our early childhood development now, so we're going as young as 6-month-old and teaching children how to live a better life. And so it ties back into, you know, that lifelong ecosystem of wellness, or what I term as the life enhancement ecosystem, so that we can help raise up the quality of your life among all aspects. But it also means that you're able to do that for your team members, right? And so they're able to have different opportunities to work in divisions that they would have never imagined they could work in, but they're able to stay within the CMG family and experience those different opportunities.
Yeah, I guess it must be difficult in a service business like yours, where you're doing personal training or teaching yoga to a high standard, to get the amount of people that you need to keep up with your growth. I know we were in China a few days ago, and that's part of the problem they have there, is that the market wants it, but it's getting, you know, bringing in people that are good enough, you know, managers or instructors. Have you got to the stage where now you've developed enough people across your clubs that you can, you know, now expand with,
Maybe
you know,
not.
with keeping good people in, or
I think it's a challenge.
Yeah,
For
everywhere.
Yeah, for sure. I think that for us, we've had to invest a significant amount of our time and our resources into the onboarding, the training, the development, because there isn't some place else they could have went to get that
Right.
training.
Yeah, it doesn't
And
exist.
so, and the probably the there's certain skills you can teach. Like I can teach somebody how to sell a membership, or we can teach somebody how to do a therapy treatment in a clinic. I mean, those are pretty easy, but it's the leadership skills that takes more time. And that's probably where we spend a significant amount of our time just mentoring to the next generation. As Dane was mentioning, like it's hugely rewarding when you are able to see that local team member that you developed, and now they're able to raise other people up. I'd love for it to be faster. I wish I could figure out a way to make it faster, but it definitely is a constraint.
takes time.
It's a
I
constraint.
guess.
Yeah, it's part of it is time.
Yeah.
And then you have to choose wisely. The people that you add to your team, are they motivated or driven by significance? Are they motivated and driven by contribution and growth?
Right.
Right. So you just manage that kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or whatever you want to call it, 6 basic human needs. And once you identify that kind of foundational aspect of what drives that human being that's coming into your organization, you can teach them all the skills and that type of stuff if they have that basis of kind of, I want to add value, I want to contribute, and I'm energized and excited by growth.
Yeah.
And a lot of people aren't, right? They're just looking for that significance. They want to be on top of the mountain.
Or certainty. They just
Or
want-
certainty. They don't want to change. They
Right.
don't want to, go to Hanoi to work and
Give me
grow,
my salary,
Yeah.
make sure that I have a job, and I'm not going to push. I mean, but that doesn't work within our organization.
No.
Not in our culture.
So what about the future then? What for you guys? There's different models. As I said, was in China and Hong Kong, and there's the boutique market that's expanding, and in some countries there's still the low cost, which is still working. You know, what do you see trends in your market, and where is your business going to go in the next sort of 5 to 10 years?
I would say technology. Talk about disruption and how to utilize it and integrate it, which is something that hasn't been done successfully here yet. We're working on. Technology is a big one.
For sure.
Yeah.
Technology, how do you stay relevant with your clients? And so it was the question, I always believe that the quality of a company is directly determined by the quality of the questions the leaders of that company is asking, right? And so if you look at the best companies in the world, I can guarantee you the leadership of that company is asking really good questions. And that's what we challenge ourselves with. And so just as we've done with our brick and mortar stores, how can we stay relevant with our clients throughout their journey in life? It's now, how do you apply technology to stay relevant and engaged with your clients? And people are in a world where they want it instant. I don't want to wait for anything. And if I'm not engaged and I'm not relevant, then you're going to lose that person. And so investing in technology, and it's a challenge when you've built an infrastructure that is based on brick and mortar. Now you're having to add in technology. There's significant costs in that. There's significant investment. Investors don't like to see that. They want to see maximum profitability, and sometimes you just have to say, no, we've got to invest into the future. So that is a big part of what we're doing. I also am a strong believer that the business model itself is going to shift. I have for a long time. I think that early days was a prepaid model, and then it moved to the dues model. Now you're seeing more of the pay-to-play starting to really have an impact, and I think that probably is where the world is going, where people have a wallet, so to speak, and I'm going to pay, and if I want to use this, I'm going to use this, and if I don't, I don't, and so I think to me that's exciting. Because if you don't disrupt yourself, someone else is going to, right? As they say. So we have a lot of things that we're implementing that allows us to utilize technology and allows us to move more towards that pay-to-play type of concept, even on a big box gym, which I think you're not seeing that in the U.S. yet. And so I think they're still relying a lot on the dues model, but the smaller boutiques are coming in and disrupting because they are doing that. And so for us, it's like, how do we get ahead of that? Because I personally don't think a market like this is probably going to move to the dues model. I think you're going to see kind of a leap into whatever the next thing is. So we've got, and we're actually deriving significant value from our clients that we've already moved to some of those concepts, and we're adding a lot more value to them. So for them, they're happy because they feel it's a lot more relevant, right? Like, I'm not just paying $10 a month and I don't use it, which was kind of that model. That strategy is like get 8,000 members and hope that a lot of them don't come, and they're going to pay a small enough amount that it's going to cover your costs, and that I don't think that's going to work in the future. I think that commoditizes the business, and it sets it, it's primed for disruption at that point, because your margins are just start shrinking. Yeah. So to me, where you avoid disruption is you stay high value and high touch, right? If we can be high value and high touch, high experiential for our clients, I think we keep them. If we lose that experience, if we lose that relevancy, if we lose that high touch, I think we're at risk of being disrupted. And it's a challenge for the service business. I mean, because if you're going to come out and say, you're going to be a Hyatt or a Ritz-Carlton, you better have the systems to be able to deliver that, because when people are walking into the door, they have that expectation. Like, if I don't get the greatest service at McDonald's, maybe, okay, I'll deal with it for that one time. I walk into Ritz-Carlton and I don't get good service, I'm not okay, right? And so I think it keeps you honest.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. There's probably all the discount dues guys out there going, he's out of his mind. No, we're going to be around forever. Maybe, I hope so. But I just think, I think it's going to be. I think it gets tougher and tougher and tougher.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And are there? We talked earlier about some of the concepts like the sort of adventure race ideas.
Yeah.
What do they call them?
You have the Spartan race,
that kind of
the
thing.
Tough Mudders, you have
Do you see any of that
marathons.
affecting, impacting?
Totally.
So there was a triathlon 3 weeks ago, an Ironman in Dane, and a year ago they had like 300 contestants, and 10%, 15% were Vietnamese. This year, the Ironman in Da Nang, Vietnam, there was 2,500 contestants and 40% Vietnamese. I took part in a couple marathons earlier in the year, and they had 10,000 contestants in the marathon each, 10,000 each. So Vietnam is kind of it's shifted. It's kind of skipping the infrastructure of kind of what's been known in the Western world, and they're definitely moving towards this event experience-based wellness, fitness, whatever you want to call it. And then that's kind of what we talked about, disrupting ourselves. Like, okay, how do we create communities in our club to get those people to prepare for those journeys, whatever the battle that you're going to face in this Spartan race? How do you get better within our ecosystem so you can give more out there on the obstacle course or on the on the road or on your bike or the swim or whatever you're participating in? And I think we're branding around that has been quite successful so far. But definitely, if you're not innovating faster than what your competitors are, like I said, the end is going to be near. So
the game is changing rapidly, and the metaphor is used often, but it's really relevant with, if you go back to the turn of the century, the guys that made carriages, right? They're not around anymore. They owned the market at that time before the car came along and before the trains came along. It was a carriage. What they failed to realize is they weren't in the carriage business, they were in the transportation business.
Right.
And you have to adapt, because transportation today is a huge industry. And so, those companies could have been at the forefront because they owned transportation. They just needed to adapt and embrace the change that was coming, but they had the clientele, they had the brand, they had all of those things, but they fell in love with their product, not with providing value to their client. And I think you're in an experience right now where you're going to see that a lot with gyms. People are too in love with their product, and they're too engrossed in that to realize that we've moved into a golden era of health and wellness. This is a time like no other time in human history. Majority of the population lives outside of poverty. Most people are looking at quality of life and how can I live a better quality of life. But if you're so enthralled in the idea of your four walls of your gym and how can I continue to get value out of that, it's not going to happen, right? You've got to get outside your four walls. You've got to stay engaged. You've got to stay relevant. You've got to be able to have experiential type of activities, and that's a beautiful thing. You can make a lot of money doing that. It's just the gym becomes a small piece of that, and it isn't going to look the same way. But you know, the golden era of gyms is not over. It's just that you've got to change how you look at them. That carriage has to evolve into the car, has to evolve into the plane, has to evolve, you know, and so it's the same way now where we're looking at it going, all right, we're on the forefront, and we've been 20 plus years in the industry of providing health and wellness services. If we don't see what's coming, shame on us, right? We've got to continue to innovate. We've got to continue to say, how can I add maximum value to the clients that I have and not worry about how I'm doing that, right? That doesn't matter. It's just doing it that in a way that's relevant and worthwhile to them. And if that means you're out in triathlons and you're incorporating these community events, and so great. You know, for us, the fitness centers are, again, the social hubs. It doesn't leave our DNA. Our DNA was always be that social hub, but how do we deliver that in a modern, relevant way for clients today?
Absolutely. And from a private equity perspective too, you have something like Ironman that was just a IP trademark, and they sold it for $950 million or something like that a few years ago. So you have these unbelievable opportunities for these people that kind of think like, okay, let's create experiences outside for people. And you have this name. You don't need the brick and mortars. You don't need all these type of stuff.
UFC is a great example, right? I mean, it was worth really not much, right? I mean, it really started out as a fight club. But they were able to recognize that they were in the media entertainment business, not in the fight club business, right? And so how you spin that, all of a sudden, it becomes a $4 billion business. No one would have imagined that. And you're seeing, ONE FC is doing the same thing. ONE FC now, I think a 1.5 billion valuation, right? Those are unheard of, So, but it's just a spin on how you look at it, Or if you're still trying to figure out how to make your gym more profitable, I think you're in trouble. But if you understand that you've built a client base and your whole goal is to add the most value you can to helping them live a better quality of life, however that looks, you do that and you'll keep them, stay with them throughout their whole life.
A couple of quick questions then before we end. So what, this one for you, Randy, you've been very successful. You probably don't need to come in the morning. What motivates you to wanting to do the next thing? What keeps driving you now at this stage in your business career?
I tried not coming in for about a year. A couple years ago, I got bored with myself, started driving myself nuts. No, I mean, what's the objective of life in general? To me, it goes back to our core culture, which is how can I grow and contribute in a significant way for the rest of my life? And right now, this particular vehicle that we've continued to evolve and to grow allows me to get those needs fulfilled. So, what am I going to do? Sit on a beach and drink mojitos? There's just no fulfillment in that. So, I want to look back on my life and say that was an amazing ride. And I tell people that have worked for us, like, if you decide to leave, I'm okay with that. But I want you to look back, and no matter what company you go to work with, I want you to say, my time at CMG, I added more value, and I contributed more, and I grew more than any other time in my life. And if we've done that for you, then we're the best place to work. And so you may find another opportunity, your path may lead you somewhere else, but if we're able to create an environment where you're able to grow and contribute in a significant way, more than any other place you've ever worked, then fantastic. And that applies to me. Every day I want to grow and I want to contribute in a significant way. And this vehicle allows me to do that. And so to me, that's the purpose of my life. That's what drives me every day. And we've been in that pressure cooker kind of environment for 20 years. I think it'd feel too weird to not be in it, but yeah, that's...
Okay. This one for Dane. What's your typical working morning routine from when you open your eyes?
So, I mean, it's changed from about 18 months ago.
Right.
So, as you probably know. I've
Yeah,
lost
you're half the man you used to be.
Yeah. 70 kilos.
Really?
Yes, actually, yeah.
Wow.
So, 150, 160 pounds. I wake up 4:30 every morning. I get 30 minutes of transcendental meditation. I'm a big believer in meditation and clearing the mind. I believe we wash our bodies, we wash our cars, we clean our house, but we never wash our thoughts. And our bodies and our families and our teams, work, whatever is important to us is a byproduct of our thoughts.
Right.
So you have to get your mind right first. So that's how I start the morning. And then I go for a workout, about 2 hours, pretty intense. I've been training for Ironmans and marathons and the Tough Mudders and all that type of stuff. So I'm a little bit crazy. And then I'm not an office guy. So I told Randy, I think I wrote it, we're designing our office, right? Our new office that we're building. And we said, write down, some ideas or things or input you want for the new office. And then I wrote, I don't want an office from the CEO. Yeah. I don't. I just, there's something, I love being with my people. It's kind of that, with the troops, with your team type of mentality. I've always been like that. When we started our first club, my office was the presentation lounge. I just propped up the computer and I just stayed there and I did emails or whatever. I was integrating, with the members, with the team and that type of stuff. So for me, it's about that meditation, washing my thoughts. It's about getting in there and getting my body right, physically active, and then going out and adding value to the team. As I think Tony Hsieh from Zappos, he coined serendipitous collisions. Serendipitous collisions mean like things you never know who you'll run into, or an issue that might happen, or an unbelievable inspirational story that might happen with you just going out and mingling with your members and with our team.
Right.
So I tend to spend probably the rest of the day, unless I have some meetings with Randy, out in the field with my team or touring clubs with a district manager or a regional manager or something like that. But I'm a big believer in just kind of being with your army, being with your troops.
Very hands-on CEO.
Yeah, I am in a way. I find myself more being from that psychology perspective, being that sounding board for my team, and I want to create a space, an environment where they feel safe and just like letting me know anything. I don't want it to be a situation where they're afraid of just speaking their mind. Then you're never going to be able to move the needle, and you're never going to find out what's really happening in your clubs, right? So I find myself just kind of, you can call it mentoring, you can call it just discussions. I call it coffee. I'm a big Starbucks fan. I've been going to Starbucks since like 1981, growing up in Seattle. And I just have coffee time with my team, and they're just telling me what's going on in the field, and maybe it's personal, maybe it's issues with family or issues with parents or whatever might be happening in their life. And if they know that you're taking that time out to really care and ask questions, maybe even outside of work, that's where you really win their hearts, and therefore you win their hands.
Yeah, great answer. I'd have to get, a few people have said about meditation, it's one of the things I need to make some time to do first thing in the day, really.
When I heard the idea of washing car, washing your house, washing your hands, washing your body, washing your teeth, but why don't we wash our thoughts? And we are a byproduct of our thoughts in every aspect that we deem valuable in our life. And not enough people do it.
No, it's a great one.
Yeah.
And then,
he's become half the man but twice the leader.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're looking good.
Thank you.
And then final one, Randy. So escape your limits is about escaping what either, we're talking about thoughts, but either you believed is probably been impossible, some sort of personal limiting belief, or other people have said may not be possible. What would be some examples in your business career where you've escaped your own personal limits?
I mean, Vietnam is a great example. I think people fight that on a regular basis, right? We're normally our own biggest critics, and we also have to learn to be our biggest champions. To me, reality is a construct. right? We construct our reality. And if things are happening to us that we deem as negative, we're bringing those into our world, right? And there's this concept of life happens to you or life happens for you. And I like to believe that life happens for me, and so that doesn't mean that I don't get frustrated and you don't have challenges coming your way, but that simple shift in the word from 2 to 4 gives me a whole different perspective of it, because then my challenge is okay, what is this happening for? What am I supposed to learn from this? What am I supposed to get out of this? How is this helping me to grow? And as long as I'm able to attach this idea that I'm growing in some way, then that the pain's worth it. So it's no different than working out. It's no different than anything that you do that's challenging. It's if you believe that there's a reward on the other side, then you're able to break through those limiting beliefs or break through those challenges, and it all is happening here. It has nothing to do with what's really going on externally. So I think I was a farm boy, grew up in obscurity out on a farm in the middle of Washington State. I remember 15 years old, being out in the field working with my dad and saying, Dad, what do people do in office buildings? I mean, I really had no clue. What do you do in an office building? I'd never experienced that, had no idea what you would do, So I think my entire life has been breaking through limiting beliefs and overcoming what other people think you're capable of, and then also what you also tend to believe you're capable of. And I draw inspiration from people, and I believe that everybody that you meet has something to teach you. You can learn from them, and if you will go about with a level of curiosity, everyone has an incredible story. So it's like what you're doing here with the podcast. It's like finding inspiration and finding the kind of inner workings of how those people got to where they are or came up with the ideas that they have, and I think it's an amazing way to break through your own limiting beliefs.
Yeah, thank you, thanks. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Wonderful story. We could go on all night. It looks pretty dark out now. I think it's time for dinner. So, so thank you very much. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Dane. Thanks. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, then please go over to iTunes and subscribe to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Leave a review, leave a comment. It really would help us a lot to continue to keep these going.